We did get a chance to talk to Cornel Saturday. He was at St. Mary's College up here in Moraga, and we talked to him about what his intentions were when he went down to Ferguson. We also talked to him about his new book, which is called Prophetic Fire, and he's talking about this age in which many people who are coming out of the church, there's a division going on. There's many who still come out of the tradition of speaking truth to fire no matter what, being witness to the truth, being a mouthpiece, so to speak, giving voice to the voiceless. And then there's a whole other thing that's kind of taken over, and it's not limited to the black church, but some of them call it prosperity gospel, others call it other names. You know, God is, country first, and God blesses your country. It's all this type of ideology that has moved away and from community building, and it's become almost kind of like a business. And Cornel talks about that in his book. He focuses on everybody from Frederick Douglass to Ida B. Wells to Fannie Lou Hamer, W.E.B. Du Bois. It's a fascinating book. So without further ado, let's have our conversation with Cornel Saturday at St. Mary's, and then we're going to listen to a speech that he gave to the student body there for their social justice conference. Davey D, hanging out with you this afternoon, sitting in front of me, the one and only, no stranger to our show, Mr. Cornel West. He is here in the Bay Area, St. Mary's College, to talk about the new Jim Crow, social justice, inequality. But he also has a new book out, and I want to jump right into that because the prophetic fire, for a lot of people who are church folks, they know there's been a war within the church about the prophetic teachings versus a whole lot of new stuff that's come in that I think you can probably speak to it. Leads to a lot of selling out. And let's talk a little bit about the prophetic teaching, because that is making a big difference in terms of what we're seeing and what we're not seeing when we're talking about social justice.
No, indeed. But first, I just want to salute your brother, Davey D. You have been such a force for good for so long, high quality. It's always a blessing to be in conversation with you. But no, you and I know about Sankofa, though, brother. It's the burden which you have to look back to your high moments, your landmarks, before you move forward. You can't play the horn unless saxophone unless you go back to John Coltrane and Johnny Hodges. Same is true for struggle. You got to go to Martin Malcolm. You got to go to Frederick Douglass. You got to go to Ella Baker. You got to go to Ida B. Wells Barnett. Mm-hmm. You got to go to those who are willing to be courageous, visionary, be of service to the least of these. And so there's a sense in which the book is a kind of love letter to the younger generation, to the Tef Poles and the others in Ferguson, saying what? Saying that we love your fire. It's a beautiful thing to be on fire for justice. But at the same time, you got to realize you're not the first one. You come from a cloud of witnesses.
Let's go over some of those witnesses, because you bring them to life. You start with Frederick Douglass. You walk through Ida B. Wells. Talk about, the character of the people that you covered, W.E.B. Du Bois, and why they were in the line of the prophetic teachings. And let's also, for the sake of the audience, define the prophetic teachings.
Yeah, by prophetic, what we mean is those who aspire to integrity, honesty, decency, believing, telling the truth, exposing lies, and engaging in courageous witness. And that's really what they were. We need examples of integrity. People who are willing to not just speak the truth, but actually pay a cost, take a risk, deal with negative consequences. And we live in a time in which cupidity has replaced integrity, love of money. Wu-Tang Clan. Cream, cash rules everything. Right. Round me. Young folk understand that. Young folk need to be connected to something a little bit deeper than just short-term gain and instant gratification, that they wouldn't be who they are if folks in the past hadn't loved them, cared for them, sacrificed for them, and tried to teach them to be the best that they could be by meeting high standards of integrity and honesty and decency.
Who stands out for you the most as a prophetic teacher?
Well, that's hard to say. That's like asking the difference between Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, and Carmen McRae, and Aretha. You know what I mean? I got to embrace all of them. I do think that the Ida B. Wells Barnett's, in some sense, it was the most courageous because she looked the raw violence of America in the face when she wrote Red Terror. She's one of the great journalists. She did that before. She was a muckraker before Upton Sinclair. Mm-hmm. She was a muckraker before the more well-known Vanilla brothers and sisters. She looked American terror in the face. Lynching, wrote that classic of Red Terror, bounty on her head, and kept telling the truth.
When we look at the church, and we understand its legacy of being a central gathering place, an organizing force, and not always, one that was organized where they were going to turn the other cheek. They're not turners. There's a whole tradition of folks that's like, deacons for self-defense, right? So two things. One, a lot of that resistance, that militaristic, militant resistance has been erased from history. That's one question I want you to address. And the second thing is that understanding that if that prophetic teaching has been such a galvanizing force, and we know that COINTELPRO and subversiveness has existed, especially in our communities. Has that happened with the church, and what your take on it? Because now you have a whole lot of prosperity stuff and prosperity teachings, and it's very oppositional to where you're coming from and what you're talking about in this book.
No, it's true. I mean, this is true for the culture as a whole. For American culture as a whole, it's been so obsessed with chasing dollars that it's difficult for integrity to break through. And this is certainly true for the black church. The black church, often in its dominant form now, preaches a prosperity gospel. Its pastors are more concerned with being CEOs rather than being lovers of the flock. That the budget reflects a priority of buildings being built rather than prison ministries being enacted. But the prophetic church is still alive. We've got J. Alfred Smith Sr. here. He is a giant. Allen Temple's one of the grand examples of prophetic black church activity and vision. And so the black church in its prophetic mode is in no way over. But we just need to accent. It's going to be more and more women, I think, too, moving toward the center of leadership. That's a beautiful thing.